Not really.
Serious matters going on right now in the world. Supreme truth gonna tell it. You know what I mean?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to my global audience. Walter Cotton. I've just been going through my edition of the Solari Report. I don't know if you guys can see that. And this is one of a 2-volume set that deals with the $21 trillion worth of missing money in the DoD budget. I know, I was kind of shocked when I first heard about it, and I said I had to investigate it and get to the bottom of it. So I'm going through the research process right now to determine whether or not this is some kind of a conspiracy or if it's real. But what I'm reading so far is just blowing my cap that they could have $21 trillion worth of undocumented adjustments within DoD, and nobody knows anything about it, and the media isn't screaming about it. But I'll give you more information about that as I unpack it. What I want to talk to you today about is an unintended consequence where a individual did something that was wrong. And you guys know that old adage, right? The righter you do the wrong thing, the wronger you get. And what I'm specifically talking about is our good friend Byron Allen's efforts to cause Comcast to come into compliance with what would be considered normal, usual, and customary business practices. For those of you who aren't aware of the case, let me bring you up to speed real quick. Apparently, Byron Allen alleged that Comcast discriminated against his media company by not licensing some of his programming. And that particular case was prosecuted in lower courts, and the lower courts found that Byron Allen could use the civil rights law to prosecute his case. Well, Comcast didn't think that the court made the right decision, so they appealed that decision to the Supreme Court. And this is where this gets murky, because the lower court decided that Byron Allen could use a measure other than but for. And in the area of civil rights legislation, right, the determination as to whether or not you're being discriminated against could be based on issues other than your skin color. The core argument in this case was that Byron Allen was not able to prove that Comcast was discriminating against him on the basis of his color, and therefore he did not have a foundation for his case. Now, here's where we, as individuals who wear my social uniform, have a higher level of accountability. We have a level of accountability that's almost to the level of that doctor's Hippocratic oath when it relates to issues that affect or influence the civil rights of our people. And that Hippocratic oath basically says to the physician that in everything that you do, you first must seek to do no harm. In this case, as it relates to the Civil Rights Act, the harm that was done is that a precedent was handed down by the Supreme Court yesterday that has taken the measure in discrimination and raised it to the level of but for. Meaning very simply that if you can't prove that but for your skin color, but for your race, they would have done whatever you were asking them to do. They would have allowed you to perform the mission that you were seeking to perform. You don't have a basis for the charge of discrimination if you are not able to prove that there was no other justification. There was no other rationale for them not providing you an opportunity to participate or perform in the task other than your skin color. That is such a high measure that its ambiguity in the Civil Rights Act was a benefit to us as a community. This decision, this precedence that was set by the Supreme Court has forever taken that measure and moved it to a level that's almost impossible to prove. right? It's almost impossible to prove that the subjective decision that the individual used for not employing you, the subjective decision that the individual used for not doing business with you was your skin color. So in this particular example, and there was a dust up from a media attention perspective that was over the moon as this case went into the Supreme Court. I mean, you look at the Breakfast Club and all of these other, Black social media programs were doing all of these interviews with the billionaire Byron Allen because he was being discriminated against by Comcast. Now that this injurious decision has hit the media, I don't hear a word from our ethnic social medias. And I'm putting you guys on notice right now because now is the time for us to be screaming at the top of our lungs that Byron Allen needs to be held accountable because he broke the cookie jar. And in point of fact, the assertion that I've seen, which was comforting, or should I say the only assertion that I've seen so far that was comforting, is Byron Allen's assertion that he was going to try to remedy this error of his legislatively. Well, I think we need to get behind him to try to help him get that done because in point of fact, this train has left the station, folks. That precedent has been set. And it is incumbent upon us to take this example and use it as the teachable moment that it is to inform the approaches and processes that we're going to take in the future. It is incumbent upon each and every one of us to use right-minded judgment as we go through the process of rebalancing the economic and social playing field, not necessarily just in this country, but across this globe. We are not in a position to redefine everything. We got to operate within the confines of the system that we have available to us. As an example, there's this concept of regentrification that is marching across the country. And it's a idea or a concept, and a right-minded idea, dare I say, that was espoused by the young rapper Roxanne Shante. And for those of you who are long in the tooth like me, you guys remember the real Roxanne. You all remember the real Roxanne from back in the day. But the long story short, they did a documentary of Roxanne's life recently. And in an interview with her, she suggested that one of the things that young people needed to see was they needed to see millionaires in their own neighborhoods, right? We have such an exodus from our neighborhoods because of integration that good quality examples of Black love, of Black family, right, is eroded within our communities. So what Roxanne Shante suggested was that we would benefit by having what she defined as a regentrification. And the idea is basically this, that those of us that were upwardly mobile, right, and acquired the economic means to leave our communities now find ourselves in a position to potentially be investors back in our communities, right, landlords back in our communities, and therefore we would benefit by gentrifying our own communities. That's what she's calling regentrification. Black people going into their own communities and buying up those blighted properties and making them Black owned. Well, at the end of the day, folks, I took some time to analyze the word gentrification because I've always had a negative connotation associated with that word because of the way it was applied against me, the way it was shared with me. So I sat down recently and I looked at the Webster definition of the word gentrification. And my read of that word basically says that it is the act of taking a community that is in disrepair and raising the inventory, raising the assets of that community up to a middle class level. Well, I looked around and I said to myself, guess what? That sounds like a community I want to live in. So my point very simply is that in order for us to level the social and economic playing field in this country or anywhere in this world, we don't have to create or invent new words. We just have to hold people accountable for the existing processes, right? The existing systems and procedures that are in place. So in point of fact, I want to actually go in and gentrify a community that I want to live in. And in point of fact, I'm going to give you a perfect example of a community that I'm currently working with in Middle Georgia to do exactly what I'm talking about. It's the Macon Bibb community in Middle Georgia. It's a community that has location, and it has a plethora of land, and it is ideally positioned right at that pivot point for logistics and transportation. And right now, there's a young man that wears our social uniform that's vying for mayor of that community. What my team is doing is we are supporting his economic development interest, and our objective is to go and gentrify the entire community of Macon, Georgia, creating an environment where well-heeled people like myself can look to a better, believable dream in a community where neighbors say good morning to you. Where you have people that look like you that are upwardly mobile, friendly, and courteous. That is the better believable dream that we have for Macon Bibb, Middle Georgia, and it's because of our secret. It's because of a little black magic that we are going to be applying in Middle Georgia that opens the door for people who wear my social uniform to go down into the Macon Bibb community and secure a foundation that produces the kind of generational wealth that you'll be able to pass down to up to 5 generations of your family. But folks, in order to get there from here, we have got to break our exercise in insanity. We've got to stop trying to correct the problems that were created by our oppressor's system while using our oppressor's strategies. Folks, it just doesn't work for us. In order for you and I to level the playing field and get this globe right back to a place of old, you and I are going to have to take our rightful positions of leadership. And we fortunately have a set of events that are moving through the ether of this entire globe that's creating a shift, that's offering an opportunity for us to change the game. I'm encouraging you to take full advantage of it, and I'm inviting you to join me in a community of practice that's known as the MPU network, which stands for Maximum Practicable Utilization. It's a watering hole where we're teaching people just like you to take advantage of a unique benefit that you were born with that's connected to a $300 billion wealth transfer. Surf out to the MyMPU network, become a member, join the community of practice, and put yourself in a position to never have to ask anyone for permission again. We're offering you something here that we believe is a cut above reparations, and we want you to take full advantage of it. So surf out to www.mympu.org and become a member of a rising tide that's raising everything in its wake. Until next time, this is Walter Cotton saying, I'm out.
Y'all
we, let's see.